Greetings Internet, Didier here, and welcome to the second real decklist video that we have for Star Wars Destiny. This time it's one of my own personal decks, Crime Lord Control. I've been playing this deck pretty much solely since I bought my Spirits of Rebellion. I've gotten a good 30 or 40 games with it in. My record is slowly improving. It's definitely a difficult deck to play, but it is very rewarding, and the look on your opponent's face when you can pull off a first, second, or third turn Crime Lord is priceless. So let's just scan over the list real quick. So you're going to see that this deck has a lot of cards dedicated to control. Controlling the opponent's dice, generating resources, and being defensive. Let's talk about the characters here for a little bit that we choose to play. We go with eJabba and eVentress. I know eJabba and Count Dooku was a deck in the set 1 meta. So a lot of people have asked me, hey, why do you play Ventress over Dooku? Well, the reason is you give up the 1 discard side for a 1 disrupt side that doesn't cost a resource. You lose a little bit of health. I think she has 2 health lower than Dooku, so she's quite weaker. But then, additionally, you get her amazing ability, and this ability scares the opponent. It basically stifles the opponent with the number of rerolls they can do per turn. And this whole deck is about just limiting the actions that your opponent has. You're going to be removing dice. You're going to be discarding cards from their hand with that awesome 2 discard side on Jabba. And then additionally, they're going to be discarding additional cards whenever they have to reroll. Now, all this is going to be happening while you're removing dice and setting up for a Crime Lord. So another reason that I do like Ventress over Dooku for this deck is that pretty much if you play with Dooku, not only does he have higher health, but also his ability just says, hey, go for Jabba first. They always go for Jabba first, and I feel like this deck, it loses a lot of steam if they kill Jabba early. But with this setup, they kind of don't know who to go for. Ventress's ability is just a crutch on the opponent. It's like you're taking them out at the legs, and they'll hate you for it. They will want to go for Ventress first. And then you'll have Jabba out nice and long, and you'll be able to throw a Crime Lord on him and just run the train. Whereas if they do go for Jabba first, you can pretty much power up Ventress to amazing proportions and make her unkillable anyway. And the battlefield that we play in this deck is the Mos Eisley Spaceport. And the reason for this is because we have some pretty low-cost upgrades. We got Fast Hands, of course, Holocron, and Data Pads. Some pretty low-cost upgrades to bounce for extra resources. Likewise, if let's say you had Crime Lord on Jabba and he was about to die, you could bounce Crime Lord into your hand to hopefully ace in the hole it. The other reason is, of course, this deck really doesn't claim that much. It doesn't happen. It's a very, very slow deck. So if you don't want to claim, your opponent is going to always pretty much be claiming. Let's give them an ability that really isn't going to help them out. Like, doesn't help out too many decks. So now let's go over the upgrades. So these are the upgrades that we're going to be working with. Got a lot of 2-ofs, some nice 1-ofs over there. We got Crime Lord at 2. This is pretty much the whole purpose of the deck right here. Got to have 2 of these. I do drop this early sometimes. Sometimes I will drop it turn 2 or turn 3 if my opponent is not going for Jabba. If my opponent is going for Jabba, I pretty much keep it in my hand to try to ace in the hole it. It has awesome sides. It has a 2 refocus side, has a 2 resource side to help you push towards the Crime Lord. It also does have a 2 shield side, but most times, often than not, I find myself using either the refocus or the 2 resource if I'm not using the special. And of course, Force Throw, amazing, even 2-fold amazing into this deck because this deck wants dice control. It needs that dice control. Vibro Knife is a huge deficit to this deck. This deck can block damage for days with a combination of Personal Shield and Force Illusion. So you can do a lot of blocking, so you want to throw that Vibro Knife dice into your opponent almost regardless of what it is. Mind Probe was in here at 2, then I dropped it, then I added it back in. It's definitely needed in this deck. The burst damage that you can do with Mind Probe Fast Hands is just off the charts. It is off the dealie, and then it also does have a 2 disrupt and a 2 discard side as well, and that 3 range damage side for a 1 resource isn't bad either. Really, really strong damaging card. It's just kind of like my power bomb when I want to push out a lot of damage and possibly kill my opponent. Moving along here to continue with the 2-ofs, we got some early game drops that we like here. Data Pad, just excellent to get those early game resources. It pretty much way more than pays for itself. You're going to get a resource out of it 9 times out of 10 the first turn you drop it. Then, turn 2 you can get another resource, maybe turn 3, maybe turn 2 or 3 you're going to get rid of it and drop it off and replace it with a better upgrade, and then you're just getting your resource back. You can't go wrong. Plus, the special side helps you set up Crime Lord as well. Just an excellent card. I highly recommend this card. 2 Sith Holocrons. Of course, the main purpose of this is so we can throw Force Throws and Mind Probes on Jabba, but we don't even need that. We would even play this card without that because it has a refocus side and a +1 resource. It's 0 cost upgrade. It's excellent in this deck. I've gotten numerous resources with this card. It's just so strong to help you set up with Crime Lord. Fast Hands is completely busted, and it is even more busted with Jabba. Jabba, getting Fast Hands on Jabba basically means you're going to put a ultimate pressure on your opponent the entire game. Fast handsing that 2 disrupt, Fast Hands 2 discard, just puts huge pressure on your opponent and could just kick them out and could just destroy any plans that they had that combat. Personal Shield, amazing. This card has saved me 5 to 10 damage a game easy. Against range decks, I almost don't even care against range decks. I'll throw this out, sometimes even on both characters, just to run the train in terms of defense. Any deck that's not going to have Vibro Knife out early game, you want to try to get this on you as soon as possible. I've had a few people ask me, is Blackmail good? And the answer is a definitive yes. Blackmail is amazing. It has a 2 discard, 3 discard, 2 disrupt, 3 disrupt, and 3 shield sides. And then, of course, every time you roll the die, the opponent can give you, that is, they disrupt themselves 1 to give you 1 resource. So no matter what, you're always getting a 2 roll side out of this. And let me tell you, that 3 discard and 3 shield side of this dice has saved me and won me so many games. You throw this out mid-game, and just keep rolling the die and keep asking your opponent, you're going to give me a resource, you're going to give me a resource. Sometimes they'll do it, and they won't realize that you're actually setting yourself up for a huge Crime Lord turn. Cunning is amazing, and the only deficit with it is that it has to go on Jabba, like Crime Lord, but it just allows you for so many different combos. You can Crime Lord with this. If you're facing baby Anakin, the Dark Apprentice, you can do 4 damage to him with the Cunning special. The combos are endless with this, and it's just such a strong card. I'd play it at 2 if I played more than just Jabba for yellow characters, but since I just have Jabba, I'm going to stick it at 1. Force Illusion is one of those cards that you'll throw out, and if your opponent doesn't have an answer for it, it will just stop them in their tracks. They won't be able to do anything. Now, granted, this is gotten around by Vibro Knife, but otherwise, it's just an excellent defense card. And the reason I don't play 2 of them is because more often than not, I found myself milling myself out too quickly. If I would play 2 of them. I like the 1, especially since it has counters in the game. It's just good to throw it down when your opponent is least expecting it. And a single copy of Force Push in here. I actually had Force Choke in here instead, but I opted out after playing in the recent large tournament at Highlander Games this weekend. I decided to stop the Force Choke and throw in Force Push instead. 9 times out of 10, I'm holocroning out the Force powers anyway, and the reason I like Force Push is not only will it give me 2 disrupt, so I can disrupt their die 2 instead of just 1. But it also has 2 damage sides. You can put out some significant damage with this card. And also it has a 2 discard side. So its sides are overall better than Force Choke. And I do feel it's better in this deck, so I made the swap. Alright guys, so now let's go over the events. So these are the events, which is pretty much the rest of the deck. There are no supports in this deck. So we got 2 ace in the hole just for the Crime Lord. Sometimes I have done blackmail as well. I actually won a game by ace in the holing my blackmail for 3 discard to mill them out. So this card does have multiple uses. It can be used on cunning as well. So it does have multiple uses. Isolation, just a great removal card, you know, as long as Ventress is still alive. Likewise with Deflect. Deflect is also great because it just adds that little bit of extra damage that this deck seems to need, and it's still useful in the meta. As long as Poe exists, as long as, you know, Krennic exists and Stormtroopers are out there, there are people playing range damage. So plus Force Lightning was just released, so you can't go wrong with playing anti-ranged. He doesn't like you, just solid, although this card for me has fallen a little bit out of flavor because it seems slow in the meta right now. Like, you have to roll in one of your characters. Not only that, but you have to roll in Ventress, essentially, because you're not going to want to remove one of Jabba's dice for this effect unless it's terrible. But even then, you're really not going to want to. So you almost have to roll in Ventress just to use this card. I've often thought of just removing it out of the deck, but it's just too good not to. And Feel Your Anger is just amazing. You know, when your opponent gets to be late game and he has 2 characters full of 3 upgrades each, he's rolling like 5 to 9 dice in. He hits 3 blanks. Hey, look, you removed their best 3 dice. An amazing card. And then, of course, Electroshock, of course, bread and butter. Can't go wrong with Electroshock. Just, it's everything you want in a removal card. So that's pretty much it, guys. A very, very standard list. And now let's go over the strategy of how you're going to play with the deck. Alright, guys, so now let's go over how we're going to play with the deck. So now, just starting out at the beginning of the game, if you happen to get initiative, and if you happen, rather, to win the roll in the beginning, usually I choose to go second. Usually I like the shields, unless I'm playing a deck that I know the shields won't be useful against. And typically, I always throw both shields on Jabba. I'm really just trying to entice my opponent to attack Ventress first. I do care if Ventress dies. I don't like it when she dies. But at the same time, Jabba's my powerhouse, so I want to keep him alive. So that's why I throw in the 2 shields on him. If they do attack Ventress first, the thing is, this is a Crime Lord deck. So I want Jabba alive so I can actually play Crime Lord on him. You can ace in the whole Crime Lord, and I've won very many a game by doing that. But it is much, much more consistent to just put Crime Lord on Jabba, and you can only do that if the opponent is attacking Ventress first. So early game mulligan, the things you're going to want to see in the mulligan 100% are one of these 3 cards. You are going to mulligan for these 3 cards in the beginning of the game. You want at least one of them, if not multiple copies of them. If you can draw like 2 data pads and a holocron first turn, you are set, sir. You are set it and forget it right there, let me tell you. So you want a hard mulligan for those cards, at least one of them. Basically, what you want, your ideal opening hand setup, you're going to spend the beginning of the game removing a lot of your opponent's dice and just slowing down the early onslaught of these aggressive decks. There are a lot of aggressive decks out there, so you want to make sure my ideal opening hand would be like a Fast Hands, a Holocron, and like a data pad and an Isolation, or a data pad and an Electroshock. Like, that would be my perfect opening hand. That way I can throw data pad down on either Jabba or Ventress, depending on who they're going to attack. Isolate or Electroshock one of their dice that would hurt me, and then just move on from there and continue to run the train. So like I said, like in the beginning of the game, that's what you're gonna usually mulligan for. If I'm facing a hard range deck, like if I'm facing like a Death Trooper Pilot, or something like that, like Snap and like Rebel Commando, like, you know, like a bunch of different range, I will hard mulligan for Personal Shield. This card will save you worlds against range decks. And even against some decks, like if I find this in my opening hand, I might keep it depending on how I'm feeling in the matchup. So that's all your early game, and that's what you basically want to do turn 1. Drop down Holocron, drop down data pad, start getting the you want to, if you can resolve 2 or 3 resources on your first turn, you're setting up for a really, really good rest of game, let me tell you. Strong, strong, strong. So what you're going to want to do in the mid game is you're going to want to start playing your force powers down. These are the big boys right here. Now, if you're setting up for Crime Lord and they're attacking Ventress, don't be afraid to throw things on her. You still want to keep her as a threat a little bit. So I'll throw a holocron on her, and I'll throw a force throw on her, and I'll roll her in first time every turn. Save my Jabba. You know, I'll just save him out there. And that's what I like to do with this deck. Like, my favorite thing to do is to wait for the opponent to claim before I really do anything. Like, I'll spend the first 2-3 phases of the turn just playing upgrades, removing dice, not doing much of anything, re-rolling. And then once my opponent claims, that's when I'll actually throw down all my stuff. I'll resolve like 3 to 4 resources. Maybe I'll ace in the whole Crime Lord. Maybe I'll just leave Jabba, unexhausted. I'll just leave him ready. And then when they least expect it, I'll just throw Crime Lord on him and roll him in and go for the Crime Lord right there. You know, you want to, this deck is a waiting game. It's a control deck through and through. So if you want to go aggressive, if you get the holocron and you want to go aggressive, start throwing down mind probes and force throws on both these characters, both of them, especially on Jabba if you can. There's nothing better than refocusing into a mind probe special. It's pretty awesome. So if they are not attacking Jabba, I will throw Crime Lord on him ASAP. If they just do 3 or 4 damage to Ventress, I'm throwing Crime Lord on Jabba, no questions asked. And I've even had opponents switch then to start doing damage to Jabba. Like, they'll do 3 or 4 damage to Ventress, I'll throw Crime Lord down, then they'll start damaging Jabba. And they're only hurting themselves by doing that. I'm not saying it's a bad play on their part, but they splitting their damage like that may do more harm than good. And that, so like key combos with this deck, like I pretty much said it already, like ace in the whole Crime Lord, that's the big thing about this deck. You just want to play very meticulously. And don't be afraid, don't be afraid to wait. All right? And a lot of times, like, I'll just keep resolving Ventress 2 melee into them. Like every turn, like if I roll double refocus on Jabba, and, it's getting to the end of the combat, I'm not really doing anything, I'll just throw 4 melee into you. 4 melee, 4 melee. The damage adds up, and this deck can actually kill 1 to 2 characters pretty easily, and Crime Lord a third. Pretty easily, I've done that. So I think out of, like, the past 10 games, I've Crime Lorded about 10 to 12 times. So I'm pretty much Crime Lording every single game. Some people asked me if this deck was consistent, and yes, it absolutely is. Crime Lord every game. You can't get more consistent than that. This deck is super fun to play. So I suggest if anyone out there likes the aggressive control decks, like, you can't go wrong. Like, when you're hitting, like, Mind Probe is like blue Crime Lord almost, in a way. Like I know it's not, but, 5 damage every turn is, spend 5 resources to kill a character. It's very comparable. This is a power bomb. And if you manage to get one of these out, like you get Crime Lord on Jabba, you get Mind Probe on Ventress, who the hell are they going to attack? No one knows. And that's really when this deck shines. And like I said this in the beginning also, this deck is all about restricting your opponent. And you're going to see that. Like the Ventress power, they only get 3 rerolls. That's it. And that's assuming they're not playing any cards. That's assuming that you're not discarding any cards from their hand. They get 3 rerolls, and that is it. So it just goes down from there. It is very easy for this deck to stop the opponent, stop any aggro decks in their tracks. So I hope you guys please like, comment, and subscribe on this video. We are going to be coming out with loads more Destiny videos. So please subscribe to Random Number Gaming for your soon-to-be #1 source for Star Wars Destiny content.